The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Wyoming, Ms. Hageman. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this incredibly important hearing and for you being willing to come in today to talk about these serious issues. Councilmember Ariola, we are very interested in learning more about the public consultation process for migrant camp at Floyd Bennett Field. Just 2 weeks ago, the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee heard testimony from the Democratic witness about how important it was to, quote, facilitate meaningful public engagement in decision-making, end quote, and especially in, quote, communities of color, end quote, and, quote, low-income communities, end quote, during the NEPA process, because it will lead to, quote, better decisions for the entire community, end quote. Councilmember Ariola, please briefly describe the public consultation process to host thousands of migrants at Floyd Bennett Field.
There was no public consultation no public consultation. There was a letter written to the president by our governor asking for Floyd Bennett. We then asked for a meeting with the governor's office. The governor's office did comply. A meeting was held. The governor was not present. We sent questions beforehand. None of the questions were answered. We followed up 2 weeks later for another meeting. That was on a Thursday. They told us no changes have happened. We don't need another meeting. And on Friday, the lease was signed.
That does not sound to be very meaningful in terms of public engagement or decision-making. Then are there communities of color or low-income communities in the area around Floyd Bennett Field and Gateway National Recreation Area that were consulted?
No, there were no areas at all, whether areas of color, low income, middle income, no areas, no communities, no elected officials. We found out like everyone else did.
So across the board, the Biden administration has totally failed at communicating and working with the community to address the crisis that the Biden administration has created. Is that fair?
It is fair to say he actually visited our city and flew in and out without meeting with the mayor or visiting a shelter.
So I would say that he is not engaged in a meaningful public engagement process. In the process, it seems to me that the Biden administration has also failed to engage with local communities of color, as we've already discussed, and other groups that are impacted by this throughout the area. Is that also fair?
That is correct.
Okay. As a result of the Biden administration not engaging in a meaningful consultation process, they reached a decision that harms your community and has caused great suffering for not only your community, but the people that they're bringing in. Isn't that true as well?
Yes, it is.
You know, Councilmember Ariola and Ms. Williams, you've quoted the NEPA handbook where it says that, quote, actions taken in response to an emergency are not exempt from NEPA review, end quote. Now, as a NEPA attorney, I don't agree that this is the way that it should be. I think that there are many situations in my home state of Wyoming where we could have prevented a wildfire, a catastrophic wildfire, for example, if we had not been held up by the NEPA process. But I think it's worth highlighting the double standard that we're seeing here in relation to the invasion on the southern border and the invasion of our cities, such as in New York. If we want to respond to emergencies related to immediate risks of severe forest fire that devastate communities and people throughout my state, we can't expedite the process. Yet when the politics of the situation is magnified enough for the world to see the disaster that has been created by the Biden administration, then what happens? Exactly what's happening with the National Park Service and what you're suffering through in New York. How do you see the politics of this situation creating a double standard for the National Park Service, particularly as it relates to NEPA?
I think that they've given it no thought, no cause, and they're talking about protecting people, but they're not protecting the people that they want to place on Floyd Bennett Field without having these safeguards in place.
One of the things that I think has been so shocking to the American public is in watching the invasion on the southern border. And the southern states, Arizona, Texas, California, and even in my area, have been dealing with this crisis for quite some time. It is now visiting upon other areas, and it is exploding across our country. It isn't just affecting one national park, it's affecting every community, It's affecting every state, and it's affecting the nation as a whole. It's tearing apart the fabric of our society because of these failed policies. I am sorry for what the Biden administration has done to you, and I am sorry for what the Biden administration has done to our country. They should be ashamed of themselves. I very much appreciate your willingness to come here and tell us about the crisis they have created. Thank you.
Young lady's time's expired.